1. What is the primary purpose of the Linux kernel? A. To provide a graphical user interface for users to interact with applications. B. To manage hardware resources and provide core system services to the operating system. C. To compile source code files into executable binary programs. D. To store user data and files in an organized file system structure. 2. Which of the following best describes open source software? A. Software that is free to use but cannot be modified by end users. B. Software whose source code is available for inspection, modification, and distribution by anyone. C. Software that requires a paid license for any commercial or business use. D. Software that can only run on Linux operating systems and platforms. 3. What does the acronym GPL stand for in relation to Linux licensing? A. General Programming License. B. Global Public License. C. New General Public License. D. Generic Permission License. 4. Which command is used to display the current working directory in Linux? A. Current working directory. B. Print working directory. C. Directory. D. Get directory. 5. What is the purpose of a Linux distribution? A. To provide only the kernel without any additional software or utilities. B. To package the kernel with utilities, applications, and management tools into a complete system. C. To replace the Linux kernel with proprietary closed source code. D. To restrict access to system files and prevent user modifications. 6. Which file system is most commonly used as the default in modern Linux distributions? A. File Allocation Table 32. B. New Technology File System. C. Fourth Extended File System. D. Hierarchical File System Plus. 7. What character represents the root directory in Linux? A. The tilde character used for home directories. B. The / character at the top of the hierarchy. C. The / character similar to Windows systems. D. The * character used for wildcards. 8. What is the purpose of a text editor in Linux? A. To compile programs into executable files. B. To create and modify text files and configuration settings. C. To browse the internet and web pages. D. To manage file permissions and ownership settings. 9. What does the tilde character represent in Linux paths? A. The root directory at the top of the file system. B. The current directory where the user is working. C. The user's home directory for personal files. The parent directory one level above current. 10. Which key combination is commonly used to terminate a running process in the terminal? A. Control key plus Z key to suspend the process. B. Control key plus C key to interrupt the process. C. Control key plus X key to exit the terminal. D. Control key plus D key to end input stream. 11. What is the super user account in Linux typically called? A. Administrator. B. Supervisor. C. Root. Master. 12. Which command is used to change file permissions in Linux? A. Change permissions. B. Change mode. C. Permissions. D. Set permissions. 13. In Linux file permissions, what does the letter R represent? A. Run permission for executing files. B. Root access for system files. C. Read permission for viewing files. D. Restrict access to files. 14. What is the purpose of the superuser do command? To shut down the system completely. B. To execute commands with superuser or root privileges. C. To display system information and statistics. D. To switch between user accounts permanently on the system. 15. Which directory typically contains user home directories in Linux? A. The user directory under root. B. The home directory containing user folders. C. The user's directory with account data. D. The accounts directory for login information. 16. What is the purpose of package managers in Linux? A. To compress files into archive formats. B. To install, update, and remove software packages on the system. C. To manage user accounts and permissions. D. To configure network settings and connections. 17. Which of the following is a popular package manager used in Debian-based distributions? A. Red Hat Package Manager. B. YellowDog Updater Modified. C. Advanced Package Tool. D. Package Manager Utility. 18. What does CLI stand for in Linux terminology? A. Command Line Interpreter for processing commands. B. Computer Language Interface for programming. C. Command Line Interface for text-based interaction. D. Central Linux Interface for system access. 19. Which directory contains essential command binaries needed for system boot and repair? A. The user binaries directory. B. The binary directory for essential commands. C. The system binaries directory for administrative tools. D. The optional binaries directory for additional software. 20. What is the primary function of a shell in Linux? A. To provide graphical windows for applications. B. To interpret and execute user commands entered at the prompt. C. To manage disk partitions and storage. D. To scan for viruses and malware. 21. Which of these is a common Linux shell? A. PowerShell from Microsoft. B. Born Again shell. C. Command prompt. D. Terminal application. 22. What does the pipe character do in Linux commands? A. Redirects output to a file for storage. B. Separates multiple commands to run sequentially in order. C. Sends the output of one command as input to another command. D. Comments out the rest of the command line text. 23. Which command is used to create a new directory? A. New directory. B. Create directory. C. Make directory. D. Make folder. 24. What is the purpose of the global regular expression print command? A. To search for patterns in text files and streams. B. To compress files for storage. C. To change file ownership properties. D. To display system processes information. 25. What is the difference between absolute and relative paths in Linux? A. Absolute paths are faster, while relative paths are slower. B. Absolute paths start from root directory, while relative paths start from current directory. C. Absolute paths are only for files, while relative paths are only for directories. D. Absolute paths require permissions, while relative paths do not require permissions. 26. What does the acronym FOSS stand for? A. Free Operating System Software. B. Free and Open Source Software. C. Federal Open Source Standards. D. File Organization System Software. 27. What is the purpose of file ownership in Linux? A. To determine which user created the file originally. B. To control who can access and modify files based on user and group assignments. C. To track how many times a file has been opened. D. To determine the physical location of the file on the disk. 28. What is the primary purpose of the system configuration directory? A. To store executable programs and binaries. B. To store system configuration files and settings. C. To store temporary files during operations. D. To store user documents and personal data. 29. Which command is used to display disk space usage of file systems? Disk usage. B. Disk free. Disk space. D. Disk information. 30. What does the path environment variable define? A. The current working directory location. B. The user's home directory location path. C. The directories where the system looks for executable command files. D. The network path to remote servers and shares. 31. What is the purpose of input and output redirection in Linux? A. To speed up command execution performance. B. To send command output to files or receive input from files instead of terminal. C. To encrypt data being transmitted between commands. D. To compress files automatically during processing. 32. What is the purpose of file compression in Linux? A. To improve file security and encryption. B. To reduce file size for efficient storage or transfer over networks. C. To change file permissions and ownership. D. To convert files to different formats and types. 33. Which command is used to change the current working directory? A. Change directory. B. Current directory. C. Switch directory. D. Go to directory. 34. What is a Linux daemon? A. A malicious program that damages systems. B. A background process that runs without user interaction providing services. C. A type of file system structure. D. A command line text editor application. 35. Which directory contains temporary files that are typically cleared on reboot? A. The temporary directory. B. The temporary files directory. C. The temporary storage directory. D. The cache directory. 36. What does the change mode 755 command do to a file? A. Makes it readable, writable, and executable by owner, readable and executable by group and others. B. Makes it readable by everyone on the system. C. Makes it executable by everyone on the system. D. Deletes the file after 755 seconds. 37. What is the purpose of environment variables in Linux? A. To store temporary files during system operation. B. To store configuration settings that affect program behavior and system operation. C. To track user login times and session information. D. To store passwords and authentication credentials.